Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Basu Godin Notebook on Monday, December 16th. Big weekend for the Canadiens. Big game in Winnipeg, which they lost. They're not a very good team on the roads. The worst road record among all NHL teams. Only 3 wins so far this season. But Arpin, I'd like to let's jump right at it. The main move was a full game of seeing Slafkovsky back on the first line and Newhook with Laine and Doc. What did you make of it? Did you like what you saw as much as Marty did?
No.
Huh?
I think Marty liked it the most of anyone who saw it. I think Marty's looking at the potential of it and not necessarily what he saw from it. Because overall, the Canadiens played a very good game. And so when your team plays a very good game and you've made a switch like that, I think you're likely to see the switch as having been successful, even if the actual switch itself maybe wasn't the source of that good game, but if the team plays well and you just made this switch, I think it's easy for a coach to put 1 and 1 and together and come up with 2, even though the answer is sometimes not 2. And so, I didn't think. I thought Slafkovsky was okay. That Doc line, Newhook's probably a better fit on that line, and Marty admitted even Marty mentioned it this morning. What we've been saying, that this is the lineup that they thought they were going to have to start the season. So. I think the team itself played well. Obviously special teams were the difference. But yeah, I didn't think it was, and even the Slafkovsky line, like Suzuki and Caulfield and Slafkovsky, they played pretty well too, I thought, but I think it was mainly Suzuki and Caulfield that were really driving the bus there. So
yeah. Well, although Slafkovsky knocked at the door on a couple of occasions, you could see him. He was present. He was not far from dominating though, and he was grumpy at practice today. I think that he's clearly bothered by the fact that things are not going the way he thought they would go, and. Yeah, and
he's not satisfied with his own play.
No, and he says, "No, I'm clearly not shooting as much as I should." And I think that it should work out. I mean, if he's in a good spot, but what I find problematic with this whole thing is that the Canadiens are very happy with the work of their third and fourth line. So if the issue's on the top 2 lines. The coach sort of handcuffs himself when he says my bottom 2 lines work well, so I don't want to touch that. But you need your top lines to be working, and then you figure out the bottom 2 lines, or because you have to be able to move guys around and not say, well, I won't touch my 4th line because it's doing so well. I understand the logic behind it. I just feel like because of that, it limits the number of options that are at his direct disposal to say, okay, what can I do to maximize my roster? Because even if Newhook's a better fit with Laine and Doc, I don't feel like Laine and Doc together is bound to work, at least in the short term.
It's not. So I would counter that by saying, you kind of have to work with what you have, right? And so I don't know the extent that I'm sure he has full liberty to do whatever he wants with his lineup, but I don't know what interest Martin St. Louis has in demoting Kirby Dach to a 3rd or 4th line role. The entire organization, including St. Louis, are pot committed on Kirby Doc. Like basically, like they have to play this out. They've let it play out this long. They got to let it play out a little longer and see if he can get to where they hope he can get to, and
Yeah.
he hopes he can get to. It's interesting to see Marty kind of defend Doc today about all the work he's doing behind the scenes to get better. Really kind of went to bat for him. That was good of him.
It reminded me what he said after the game where when he scored his goal,
Mm-hmm.
and he said how there was he tipped his cap to the whole Canadian support system,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, so mental health, people in the gym, the conditioning and all that stuff, and obviously Adam Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
So there were hints of that this morning too. But yeah,
Well,
it's
it wasn't a hit this morning. It was blatantly. I think he was asked directly. Like when does he do enough
yeah,
off the ice? Basically, and so he really. And for Martin St. Louis to say he does plenty, that's a high bar, because
yeah,
I mean he obviously expects a lot to be done. So he's putting in the work, according to the coach. I have no reason to doubt that. It's just that it still seems just too heavy for him, and yet again, he Canadians are controlling that game through 13 minutes, and then Doc gets called for a penalty, and then the puck's in their net. Then 2 minutes later, the puck's in their net again, and they lose all the momentum they had gained. It's just been a very frequent occurrence with this
yeah.
player this season to take the wrong penalty at the wrong time, and really cost his team. So, on top of the lack of production, on top of the lack of that dynamic element that we've seen from him, other than in flashes this season, it hasn't consistently been there. Um, you know, Under normal circumstances, you would have every reason to move him down the lineup, but I don't think these are normal circumstances.
Well, it's because there's no real option. I mean, you won't promote Evans and only to put Doc on the fourth line. That would be, you know, that'd be weird. Unless,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that'd
that's
be
why,
weird.
like, he has a clear, like the original premise, like, I don't want to touch my bottom two lines. Like, there's no candidate on the top six that makes sense to move down. And there are a few candidates on the bottom six, like Heineman's obviously a candidate. Martin's made his feelings on that clear to move him up the lineup. Anderson's a candidate. Gallagher's a candidate. But who do you take out? I don't know if putting Laine on like Laine with Dvorak and Anderson, that work.
Yeah,
And then you have Gallagher, Newhook, and Doc. I don't know. It's you kind of have two clear groupings of forwards, and making any change just seems to be putting someone in the wrong chair, like right off the bat. So I think his hands are somewhat tied.
so anyway, yeah, anything to add on Newak and Slavkovsky? I
I
don't
mean,
know if
listen, I think it's been one game, so let's give it some time. These are the lines that he wanted to go with to start the season, and this is a fully healthy Canadians lineup. And so let's give it some time to see if these lines can work. I think in theory they should be able to, although I do agree with you that if Doc is not his normal Doc self, that his pairing with Line A makes less sense than it would have in theory going into training camp, where you're like, oh, we're going to get Doc back. He's going to
right,
be dynamic and this and that, and he can set Line A up and he can win pucks back and can maintain possession, and Duha can be the guy who goes and digs pucks out and gets them, and then Line could just pop goals from that. That theory sounds a lot more sound than the actual reality of Kirby Doc right now and Patrick Line right now. And Newhook is pretty much the guy that I think St. Louis thought he would be, missing some production, but basically he is that guy. But I
yeah.
don't think Doc is the guy that he was when St. Louis was putting these lines together, and Line A is probably not either, even though he couldn't have expected much out of Line A even back then. considering how much time he'd missed. So, but yeah, it's I mean, we sound like a broken record. A lot of it just rests on Doc. The poor guy, like he's got a lot on his shoulders, like he's got to know how important him figuring it out is to the entire group. Like it,
Yeah,
it's really a big burden for him. I feel, and I feel like he knows it.
but that being said, I mean, there's a story that I think is not told enough, is how through that Nick Suzuki has really picked up his game in a big way in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
At this point in the season, he's still a point per game guy. He's still a plus guy, which he has never been before in his career. Honestly, and his line, or at least when he's on the ice with Caulfield, things are going rather well 5-on-5. I think that he's really doing his part. After that, it's the other lines, but we cannot say, well, Suzuki's suffering because the second line is not working, or we need the second line because Suzuki is not producing. At least the captain is really giving what's expected right now, and I think it's not recognized enough.